Ark Carney stated 8 words that reshaped the terms of the most critical trade relationship in the Western Hemisphere. He declared that Canada would not pursue a minor deal, not a conditional one, nor a negotiation crafted for a press release. That clear refusal was directed at the assumptions Washington held about Ottawa's eventual compliance. This statement is the surface event. Beneath it lies the structural groundwork Canada has quietly developed while Washington assumed Ottawa was merely waiting, a story largely overlooked by most reporting. Anani's role at this juncture is deliberate. He became Prime Minister in early 2025, coming from a central banking background, not a career in politics. His expertise is rooted in analyzing systemic risk, interpreting structural incentives, and managing high-stakes uncertainty. He led the Bank of Canada through the 2008 financial crisis, and later the Bank of England through Brexit. He possesses technical precision about leverage, its construction, and the costs of surrendering it prematurely. When someone with that formation says they will not settle for a minor deal, it carries weight beyond ordinary political rhetoric. He is not performing for the public, he is calculating strategically. The structural decision, plainly expressed in the interview and reflected in Canada's actions over the prior 6 months, is straightforward. Nations that accepted quick Trump-era deals are not better off. They are merely more constrained in the long term. Ninita Naren pressed the question directly, asking whether countries like the United Kingdom, Japan, and the European Union, which reached preliminary tariff arrangements with Washington, were satisfied. Carney's response was measured. Privately, he said no one was happy. Those deals were not truly valuable. He did not identify names or elaborate, letting observers draw their own conclusions. The implication is stark. The model deal Washington has repeatedly showcased as ideal is one that those who accepted it privately view as a loss. Carney acknowledged this and concluded that Canada will not repeat their error. Yet the aspect of the interview that received minimal attention reframes Canada's posture entirely. Carney stated that Canada could sit down that very afternoon and complete the negotiation within 10 days if the American side had the willingness and capacity. Read that carefully. Canada is ready. The limiting factor is not Ottawa's resistance, but Washington's operational bandwidth. The country portrayed as the obstructionist, refusing concessions, is in fact prepared to finalize the agreement immediately. This is not a negotiation tactic. It is a statement of operational reality, indicating Canada's underlying position is stronger than widely reported. Both Canadian and media assumptions have long held that the power imbalance is fixed and unfavorable. With $719.5 billion in goods crossing the Canada-US border in 2025, 71.7% of Canadian exports going to American buyers, and deep integration across automotive supply chains, energy, and agricultural processing, the belief was that Canada had no option but to accommodate. Any resistance was assumed temporary, any refusal merely posturing, with the inevitable outcome being a deal on Washington's terms. Inani's interview and the diplomatic groundwork laid over 6 months demonstrate this assumption is factually incorrect. The asymmetry operates in both directions, and Washington has been slower to recognize the disadvantage that runs against it. Since January 2026, Canada's position has strengthened. In February, Canada became the first non-European nation admitted to the European Union's Security Action for Europe initiative, known as SAFE. This admission did not occur because Canada simply requested it politely. This occurred because the European defense industrial base requires Canadian titanium, uranium, aluminum, and manufacturing capacity. Brussels made a deliberate decision that incorporating Canada into their collective procurement framework merited formal treaty recognition. Practically, SAFE membership grants Canadian industries access to European defense contracts worth billions of euros. It ensures that Canadian aerospace and defense producers are no longer reliant on a single client. It also means that future NORAD modernization procurement does not need to be fully aligned with American industrial priorities. In late April 2026, Carney traveled to Yerevan, Armenia, to attend the 8th European Political Community Summit. He became the first non-European head of government invited to this forum. Over 4 days, he held bilateral discussions with leaders from France, Italy, Poland, Spain, Ukraine, the European Council, the European Commission, and the European Parliament. These were not ceremonial visits. They constituted the foundational talks for a redefined trade and security relationship. All of this took place while Washington was preoccupied with internal debates over the CUSMA review timeline. Since 2025, Canada has signed over 20 agreements on critical minerals. The scale demands attention. These 20 bilateral arrangements cover lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite, neodymium, praseodymium, and 34 of the 50 minerals the United States formally designates as critical to its national security. The Washington-based Center for Strategic and International Studies published a report in early 2026, noting that Canada may be the United States' best viable option for mineral security, not due to diplomacy, but because of geology. Canada possesses a resource base that no other allied nation can match at scale in North America. The Saskatchewan Research Council reached a 2024 agreement targeting 500 tons of rare earth magnets annually by 2026. This production directly lessens China's monopoly influence over the rare earth processing chain on which American defense procurement depends. Carney explicitly stated that Canada will not leverage energy or critical minerals in the trade negotiations. He emphasized this consistently, yet the importance of that declaration lies not in reassurance, but in the strategic context. Leverage functions without being overtly displayed. The mere existence of alternatives, the awareness in Washington that Canadian minerals are committed to European agreements, and Canadian defense capacity is integrated into EU procurement frameworks creates the negotiating environment. Carney does not need to threaten to halt nickel shipments. It is sufficient for Washington to recognize that alternative buyers exist, are organized, and are actively engaged in contracts. This is the architecture of Canada's counter strategy, a detail almost entirely overlooked in coverage of the interview. Consider the implications for the COSMA timeline. July 1st, 2026 is the joint review trigger date specified in the agreement. Under the COSMA framework, the three signatories have three options: renew for 16 more years, withdraw entirely, or indicate non-renewal, triggering an annual rolling review process. The Trump administration intends to use the review to press demands on Canada's supply management system, digital services legislation, procurement preferences, and automotive content rules. Washington expects maximum pressure to extract maximum concessions. The same approach previously applied to the UK, Japan, and the EU, which resulted in deals those countries privately regard as losses. Carney signals to Washington through the interview and every diplomatic action since February that Canada has prepared to ensure refusal is not catastrophic. This is the essence of the counter strategy. Not a specific policy or threat, but a demonstrated capacity to bear the cost of saying no. A critical detail overlooked in coverage is polling. The Abacus Research Survey published in late April 2026 found 58% of Canadians believe Carney is managing the trade negotiations effectively. Even more revealing, only 26% of Canadians trust the Trump administration to uphold the terms of any eventual agreement. That figure carries immense strategic significance. A population that doubts the counterparty will honor a deal cannot be easily persuaded to accept a rushed settlement. In a nation where 3/4 of voters already question the counterparty's reliability, the political cost of a bad deal outweighs the cost of no deal. That domestic asymmetry is not something Washington can easily navigate. The Carney Doctrine, evident across decisions from safe membership to the European Political Community Summit to the interview, is grounded in the understanding that Canada's long-term challenge is structural, not transactional. The issue is not a specific tariff or provision. The problem is that 71.7% of Canadian exports go to a single buyer, even in a year when that share had already fallen from the 75 to 76% range of previous decades. That concentration risk turns every bilateral negotiation into an asymmetric exercise in coercion. The solution to this structural problem is not simply securing a better deal, it is reducing dependence. Every percentage point of exports shifted from American buyers to European buyers, from American defense contracts to EU safe procurement, or from American rare earth processing to Saskatchewan refinery output serving global markets, diminishes the leverage Washington can wield at future reviews. This is not a short-term plan, it is a 10-year restructuring. Carney, with his central bank background and deep comprehension of long-term balance sheet dynamics, is the most capable architect Canada has produced in a generation. The appropriate analogy is not the United Kingdom. The UK accepted a small Trump deal and then privately complained, which is exactly the outcome Carney has instructed against. The better comparison is Norway. Norway, outside the European Union, possesses vast sovereign wealth from resource extraction and does not rely on any single trading partner for the majority of its exports. When a major partner applies pressure, Norway absorbs it, adjusts minimally, and continues with the patience of a country whose long-term financial architecture outlasts political cycles. Canada has the resources to build a similar posture. Its resource base is larger than Norway's. Its population is 6 times greater. Its industrial base is more diversified. What Canada lacked until recently was political leadership willing to withstand the short-term friction that reducing U.S. dependence creates. Whether Carney can maintain that posture through the political strain of a COSMA review, ongoing tariff pressures, and domestic criticism from businesses tied entirely to American supply chains remains the question. The strategic framework, however, is sound. The element that carries the most weight in Washington right now is not the refusal itself, but the quiet revelation in the interview that Canada is prepared to negotiate a complete settlement in 10 days. That statement eliminates the argument that Carney is stalling. It eliminates the notion that Canada needs months of preparation or domestic management before concluding a deal. Responsibility now rests on whether Washington is willing to engage on comprehensive terms or is interested only in the small deal that Carney has publicly deemed unworthy. Canada stands at the midpoint of a structural transition that will shape its economic landscape for the next 2 decades. Reducing dependence from 75% of exports to closer to 60% is not without pain. Industries must find new buyers. Logistics networks must be restructured and diplomatic relations converted from statements into enforceable contracts. None of this is complete. The CUSMA July 1st, 2026 deadline arrives before the transition concludes. That is the risk. Yet the risk of signing a deal locking in Washington's terms for 16 years during this period is far greater than holding the line and enduring ongoing tariff pressure while diversification progresses. This is not rhetoric. It is the calculation of a former central bank governor who understands compound interest in ways most politicians do not. The question is not whether Canada possesses the structural foundation to reject a small deal. The foundation exists. European partnerships are signed, mineral agreements are active, domestic support is measurable, and Carney has articulated the logic with precision that cannot be dismissed as bravado. The question is whether Ottawa sustains that posture through the friction of the July review and whether Washington recognizes, before the formal trigger date, that the country across the table has spent 6 months quietly ensuring that the word no carries real weight. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.